And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you once again for joining me on this really rainy, crappy, late May Friday night. Is that the right grammar? I guess so. But I'm looking forward to interacting with you. I'm looking forward to giving you a good show tonight. And before I get started on my usual variety of topics, I just want to encourage you to please like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel, where we bring you live shows every day, such as this one. We bring you audio-only shows, such as Let's Ride, The Live Mic, The Retro Show, The War Room, The Stat Geek. Please check. You can check those out on any audio platform, such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, I think is one. And of course, you can check out all the live shows after the fact on any audio platform. And please check us out on YouTube too. We're coming to you live on YouTube, or not YouTube, Facebook. I'm sorry. We're coming to you live on Facebook in addition to YouTube. So please, you can find any of our live shows on Facebook while they're also airing on YouTube. So please check that all out, and check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown, OTA coverage, mini camp coverage coming up soon in June, training camp coverage, the regular season, playoffs, you name it. We have it for you. As we like to say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And now I will begin my variety of topics. I'm a little off kilter tonight. It took me longer than usual to log on. I don't know what was going on with my computer, but I usually like to be on right at 9 o'clock, but it took me so long to log on. I don't know what's going on. Something with Google, who knows? But you don't want to hear about my problems. You want to hear about the Steelers. And before I get into that, I just want to welcome everybody to the live chat. We have Owen David. He says, hey, from UK, it's Tales from 2 a.m. here. UK, Steeler Nation 78. Well, that means he's talking to us it's 2 a.m. where he's at, because I know that. I don't know much, but I know the UK is 5 hours ahead of America. So that means he's watching us at 2 a.m. That's dedication right there. So welcome, Owen. Robert Hardy, Jared Devil, Brad Jewett, George Teston, who says it's kind of chilly too. It is chilly. The other day I was out running, and I thought I was going to pass out. It was so humid. And now it's rainy and chilly, and I don't have to put the AC on. It's typical May weather. AJ Gavin Anthony is joining us. And I think that's everybody so far. Steelers Chick 46, Michael O'Malley. He says, yo, let's go. Sorry. I was frozen there for a second. Jeff Dunn, 46 degrees in Michigan. All right. Mark Davison. What I missed? Is it preseason yet? No, not yet, Mark. Mark, man, what a great job he did last week hosting. I don't know if you checked it out with him and Matty Peverall, but last Saturday he hosted Touchdown Under. They both do a great job. But Matty Peverall, he's great. But Mark Davison, he's moving up the depth chart. He's starting to show everybody that he's host capable. Right? Probably more than me. I mean, he doesn't fumble the beginning of shows like I do just about every week. But that's okay. Welcome, Mark, and everybody else. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Steelers they have conducted or they're continuing to conduct OTAs this week. And, it was pretty cool seeing the players in camp or at practice, I should say, not really camp. It's practice in shorts on the south side of Pittsburgh. Pretty much everybody was there, except I think maybe the wide receivers weren't there, but whatever. It's voluntary. And you know me, I don't sweat that kind of stuff. But it was good to see Ben there doing his thing. And I think one of the biggest things to come out of OTAs was the footage you saw of him unleashing 50-yard bombs. And yes, it was obviously football in shorts, and he wasn't under attack, and he didn't have to worry about avoiding any pass rushers. But still, with all the question marks surrounding him and his supposed regression at the end of last season, it was nice to see him airing things out. And I don't think there's a question about the strength of his arm. Maybe the accuracy. I don't know. That could have been attributed to his difficulties with the long bomb last year. Could have been attributed to coming off of major elbow surgery. I think people tend to forget that about these guys. Ben came off the biggest injury of his life last year, the biggest surgery of his life, and he was also 38 years old. And I think people kind of just they think these guys are superhuman, but they're not. They're some of the greatest athletes in the entire world. Certainly the greatest athletes in the football universe, the American football universe, and but still they're human, and I think we kind of forget how difficult it could be to come back from a major injury and major surgery like that, even if you're one of the best quarterbacks who's ever lived. So I think there might be hope for him this year to surprise a lot of people and come back better and stronger than he was last year. And last year wasn't really, when you think about it, when you really look at the big picture with Ben last year, it was a great year for him. 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. We say this just about every show, but people they're focused on how we finish things out. It seemed like they weren't getting a whole lot of love for what they were doing on offense and what he was doing as a sort of a dark horse MVP candidate over those first 8, 9, 10, 11 games. They're only focused on the last month and a half and that playoff game. And they're not looking at things, to me, objectively. I think there's a lot of anti-Ben bias. And as I've said before, it's probably because of the way Steeler fans are and the way we are so passionate about the team and the way we attack anybody who has anything bad to say about anybody on the Steelers, but specifically Ben Roethlisberger, because, he's a bit of a sacred cow here. I mean, you think about Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, Drew Brees in New Orleans when he was still there. When you have a big time quarterback and you have all these outsiders questioning him, people are going to go nuts. So when you have the likes of Adam Shine and all these other national types constantly downgrading Ben, writing him off, I think they do that a lot in a lot of cases. They believe it, but I think in a lot of cases they do it to rile people up and to get the clicks, as people like to say, to stir the pot. But I think that was the biggest, not the biggest news, but one of the bigger stories was watching Ben air it out. I mean, he really didn't see a whole lot at OTAs this week. I mean, from what the reporters were able to provide the fans on social media, I mean, it was like smartphone video from really far away. Like if you were at training camp and you were standing up in the bleachers at Chuck Noll Field, taping practice. That's kind of what you got on social media. So you really couldn't glean a whole lot from it. Players like Najee Harris, and they look good in their drills, but I expect those guys to look good in drills. Like when you're in football in shorts, if you can't kind of get a grasp of those kind of drills that you've been doing your whole life, then you might be in a bit of trouble. And you probably don't belong. Maybe you don't belong in the NFL. So I always expect these guys to look good at OTAs, and they usually do. You usually don't hear very many negative stories coming out of OTAs. You don't. The only time you hear negative stories at OTAs is when somebody gets hurt. I remember, was it 2012, 2013, Baron Batch? Remember him? A lot of people were very excited about him, a late round pick. Just a tremendous personality, breath of fresh air type of guy. He's an artist, he certainly he was showing that side of himself even back then, but he got hurt. I don't know if it was training camp or an OTA, but it was a non-contact drill, and he tore his ACL, and he was never the same after that. So to me, when these players can get out of any kind of off-season workout, whether it's OTAs, mini camp, rookie camp, or training camp, if they can get out of that without suffering a major injury, to me, that's the biggest the biggest deal, the biggest thing I worry about. All the other stuff, again, the reporters, the quote unquote real reporters, the credentialed reporters, the people that are paid to cover the team in person, they couldn't even really be in person. They had to sort of watch from afar, and they're not allowed to report on anything specific. They're not allowed to report on who was there and who wasn't there. All they can really do is say, well, Ben threw 50 yards. He looks good. Najee Harris looks good. You know, those are the only things they can say. And of course, the players, they're always speaking positively when they're speaking with the media at OTAs. Nobody's going to have anything negative to say. It's the off season. You're just practicing. You're getting acquainted with each other. You're getting to know one another again, either whether it's a new teammate or even an old teammate that you haven't seen in months. So you're really not going to hear too much negative stuff coming out of OTAs, except unless a player isn't there, and I'll get into that in a bit. But the other big news, in my opinion, coming out of OTAs was not anything to do with schemes or anything like that. It's the fact that Devin Bush, in the small snippets that I've seen of him so far, looks as fast as he ever was before his ACL injury. And to me, that's big. That's a big deal because he was Zach Banner suffered a torn ACL, but he suffered his in week 1 of last year. So he obviously had maybe 6-7 week head start as far as mending and being healthy for the start of the 2021 season. And by all accounts, he's okay too, which is another big deal because I think they're counting on him to be their right. And in fact, I know they're counting on him to be their starting right tackle in week 1. So, and they paid him a pretty decent contract in free agency. So the fact that he's apparently okay and he's at OTAs and he's putting in the work and the fact that Devin Bush looks great and looks fast, looks agile. The one clip that I did see of him during the week, people were going, ooh and ah in the background. My goodness, would you see that play? I guess his teammates or his coaches. So to me, that's important because he's the center of that defense. Devin Bush is the center. Minka Fitzpatrick obviously is too, but Devin Bush, there was a reason why they were so aggressive in moving up to get him back in 2019 in the NFL draft. So if you can get him back and 100% physically by week 1, which I think he's well on his way to being that, then that's a very important thing. So what else do I want to say about OTAs? I have it all written down. Let me see here. Putting in the work. These guys, in addition to seeing like the nice long balls and the agility by people like Devin Bush and Najee Harris and whomever else that they showed during the week, watching these guys, like when you hear the stories of Alex Highsmith gaining 3 or 4 pounds of muscle to prepare for his chance, his big shot of replacing Bud Dupree as the starting outside linebacker opposite of TJ Watt. To me, that's encouraging. The fact that he looks like, I mean, he looked great last year, but he looks like an absolute stud this year. At least based on the pictures I've seen coming out of OTAs, he looks totally jacked, as they say in the wrestling business. So I think that's great. And Marcus Allen looks like he put on a lot of weight. He's really committing himself to his role as an inside linebacker and not so much a safety anymore, but a true inside linebacker. So that's encouraging. And I think that it's important to remember. And of course, Ben, before I get off on a tangent in a second, Ben looks as thin as he did last year, but the tangent I want to get on or go off on, however you say that, is the fact that we focus so much. I'm talking about fans in the media. We focus so much on these players and their discipline and their focus, right? But I think when you see them working so hard in the gym, whether it's at an official capacity at Steelers headquarters or on their own somewhere on the West Coast or the East Coast or wherever, and they're pumping iron and they're building muscle and they're doing the drills at some field somewhere. In fact, I was out a couple weeks ago with a buddy of mine doing sprints at some local high school field, and I saw a really tremendous athlete doing those cone drills in the middle of the field. I wanted to get close and see if it was a Steeler, but I could never really get close enough to. But anyway, when you see these players doing that, to me, that's all the evidence you need. That's all the example that you need of their commitment, because it's a year-round thing for these guys. I mean, if they slip up even a little bit, if their commitment wanes even a little bit, and when I say commitment, I don't mean 24/7, 365 commitment. I mean commitment when they're on the clock, when they're supposed to be putting in the work. That's the commitment I'm talking about. To me, that's the evidence. When you saw the stories last year out of in the offseason of Juju and James Conner putting on, bulking up, putting on all that muscle and getting ready for the season and committing their bodies and for the 2020 season, and perfecting their conditioning and their fitness. To me, that was the evidence that those guys are focused. All this other stuff that people like to focus on at the end, like during the season, TikTok, Instagram, social media posts, that doesn't matter. I know people like to think it matters, but it really doesn't. The evidence is in how they show up to training camp every year, how they look when you see them being interviewed in the locker room. Well, in most normal seasons, when their shirts are off and you see how ripped and chiseled they are, you don't get that way by being lazy. You get that way by committing yourself above and beyond what the average, even the great athlete who isn't who's just an average Joe who happens to be a great athlete. They're above and beyond even that. So I don't think, when people talk about logo dancing and all this stuff and brand furthering, to me that doesn't commute. That doesn't, me, you guys know me. I'm pragmatic. I'm practical. That stuff is not gonna ever move the needle for me. What moves the needle for me are results, and as long as you're producing, that's all I care about. And when people say stuff like, well, if they win, then they could do that stuff. Really? You think if they won a championship and then started doing TikTok videos and stuff like that, you think that would be, you wouldn't care about that? Some people would care about that, and they would say they're fat cats and it went to their head, and so there's always a reason to criticize these guys for stuff like that. But to me, that's just it's all nonsense. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. To me, it's all nonsense. The proof is in the pudding, and I think the fact that these guys are so in such great shape, that's all I need to know. And one more tangent about fitness, and that's Ben, who looks just as thin and ready to go as he did last year. And I know he's come into camp in recent years looking pretty good. So why do we keep hearing these old jokes, these old tired jokes about Ben and his fitness level? Every time somebody talks about Ben in the offseason, they always joke about his beer drinking and his junk food eating and all this other stuff, when it's quite obvious that he's committed himself to being in shape. Did he poo-poo that stuff years ago? Yeah, of course he did. You can't deny that. He probably didn't commit himself to being in the best shape that he possibly could be in his younger days. He got by more on his natural athleticism, his natural gifts, whereas now that he's getting older, he's coming off major surgery. He wants to keep playing. He wants to try to win a title before he heads out the door. Maybe he realizes, okay, I have to really commit myself. I'm not getting any younger. I have to put in 110%. I have to make it a 24/7, 365 kind of thing. When it comes to my fitness, I have to stay in shape year round. I have to come into camp in tip-top shape. So why those jokes still persist when it's quite obvious, when the evidence is quite clear that Ben Roethlisberger is in great shape? Why those jokes still fly, I don't know. To me, it's just laziness, not just by the reporters, by the national people, by the local people, by the fans who still just go out and say this stuff. I mean, we always accuse these national reporters of not knowing what's going on in the 412/724 when they make when they write their stories and have their hot takes on social media. Well, we do the same thing here. We see how in shape Ben is, and yet we're still making fun of his lack of commitment to fitness, and I just don't get that. So that's just the a tangent I wanted to go off on. A rant I wanted to have, a la Dennis Miller, but without the bigger vocabulary, because I'm not Dennis Miller. I'm sorry. It's quite obvious I'm not. And on that note, I will close out the first half of this show. If you're watching me live on YouTube or Facebook, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right back. So please stay with me. If you're listening on an audio platform, I thank you for downloading part 1. But please, if you can, download part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio. If you're watching me live on YouTube and Facebook, thank you for staying with me. If you downloaded part 2, I certainly appreciate that. I hope to have a great second half of the show. I don't know yet. Spoiler alert: I don't know how the second half's going to go. Hopefully it's going to go really well. And let's see if we have in the live chat before I continue. We have Wes Hickok, who says Tony in all caps, and I certainly welcome the enthusiasm. Thank you for joining me, Wes. Wes is the man. He's always been a big fan, and you know me. If you're a big fan of me, my ego needs that. I'm a diva, right? And here's Jeff Dunn from Facebook, who says I pencil in Harris as Rookie of the Year. I could definitely. I saw somebody. I think it was Michael Beck retweeted something the other day. Some list somebody put out of the top 10 rookies they think are going to have the biggest impact, and I couldn't believe that Harris wasn't on this list. I mean, fine, the Steeler hate is palpable around the country. People like to see they'd like to rile the fans up with this kind of stuff. But how could the top running back picked in the draft? How can picked by the team who finished last in rushing last year? How can you not say that guy could potentially have the biggest impact or among the rookies who have the biggest impact in 2021? I don't get that, but whatever. I don't get a lot of things that the national people say about the Steelers anymore. And here, what else we have here before I go on here? Oh yeah, they're talking about Le'Veon Bell, and I guess he was in the media for saying he's going to show the people. Come on, Le'Veon. I mean, it was quite obvious that you were kind of slowing down in 2017, and I get it. I mean, they rode you to the wheels fell off. I think 2016 is where Bell peaked. Remember that fabulous run he had at the second half of the 2016 season into the playoffs where he set all kind of records. But I think he kind of fell off a bit in 2017. He wasn't really the breakaway threat that he was in previous years, and of course he really hasn't done much since that. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, wasn't he trying to prove people wrong last year and the year before that and the year before that? I just think he might be washed up, and that happens with running backs. I mean, I don't deny him his own opinion that his own belief in himself that he's going to show everybody that they were wrong. But I mean, where's this been the last 3 or 4 years? I mean, running backs don't just regress for 3 or 4 years and then all of a sudden regain their pep by the age of 30. It usually doesn't happen that way for any football player, but especially a running back. So I don't know. I mean, I cherish the moments that Bell had when he was here as a Steeler. I think he was one of the best running backs they ever had. It was unfortunate how things ended, but it happens a lot in the NFL with contracts and in the free agency era, salary cap and everything, and whatever. I mean, no hard feelings. I wish him the best. Ross Obenstein says, I love all the bad talk about us and having tough a schedule. When that happens, just like 2008, we win Super Bowl. I hope so. Because that would be nice. I think it would like Mark Davison said a few weeks ago. If the fans get another title, I can't do it in the Australian accent, but it's like, all right, settle down for a little bit. I think that was a perfect way that Mark Davison said that. Maybe we'll take a chill pill for a while. Probably not, knowing fans the way that I do, but hopefully. And I want to get to my next topic, and that is the attendance of OTAs and why it's such a big deal to people. I get why it's a big deal, because fans they want to think that the players are committed to football, to their craft all year round, and I think they are. I think even the ones that don't show up to OTAs are committed to their craft. Again, if you slip even a little bit in your fitness regimen, I don't care if you're at OTAs or not. If you slip even a little bit, it's gonna show up. So I get why the fans are upset when certain players don't show up, and from what I understand, the receiving corps decided not to attend en masse this week. I don't know why, but I don't know what the motivation is. I don't know if it's some kind of stand. I don't know if they're trying to show solidarity with the NFLPA, the union, who's kind of encouraging players to not show up. I don't know what it is, but again, it's their business. If they don't want to show up, they don't have to show up, because the key word in this whole thing is voluntary. These are voluntary workouts, and until they're not voluntary, then I don't really think we should be able to criticize them as much as we do for that. I was on Twitter the other day, and some Vikings fan was upset that Daniel Hunter is holding out, if you want to call it holding out, I don't think boycotting OTAs because of a contract thing. And he said he should honor his contract and be here. And my response was, well, he is honoring his contract, because the CBA clearly states that they don't have to show up to these workouts if they don't want to. Until you change that, until you change the language in the contract, until you agree that these all have to be mandatory, then they could stand right outside of the fence of the practice field and say, hey, look, they could bring a lounge chair and sit and drink beer and watch their teammates practice. There's nothing anybody can do because they're voluntary. It wouldn't be a good look. But have you ever been pressured by your boss to do something in your off time that you really didn't want to do, but you felt pressured into doing it? You felt like if you didn't do it, your boss would hold it against you. I mean, to me, I think that's what OTAs are for a lot of these guys. I mean, do you think they really want to show up in the middle of the off season and run around in their helmets and shorts? I get why the rookies would want to do it. They want to make a good impression. But if you're like a 10-year vet, if you're Cam Hayward, if you're Ben, David DeCastro, like, do you really want to show up to this stuff? And okay, fine. You're putting work in. You're doing these drills. You're getting some one-on-one. But once they're over, you're off for another 5 or 6 weeks. Once the OTAs finally end in the middle of June, you're off for 6-7 weeks before training camp starts. So all that work, I mean, it's going to wear off, right? I mean, the muscle memory is going to be gone by the time training camp rolls around, presumably. So, does it really matter? I mean, I guess it matters as far as like the team meetings. I could see that being important. But those are things that you could do online. You could do those things virtually. They did it last year, and they were just fine. And last year they started out 11-0, and they had a virtual offseason. The entire offseason up through training camp, up until training camp, was virtual, and it didn't seem to affect them at all. I mean, they kind of regressed at the end of the year, but what was that all about? A lot of people thought that was about them not having an appropriate bye week. It had nothing to do with not showing up for OTAs. So I don't know. I just think we should cut these guys a little bit of slack when it comes to this stuff, because it's something that never used to be in the news years ago. I mean, it was people got mad about training camp holdouts. They didn't really care about any of the other stuff because the other stuff didn't really exist. OTAs weren't a thing until, I don't know when, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Minicamp was a mandatory thing, but I don't remember anybody getting upset about that either. It was either training camp or if they held out during the regular season, people obviously got upset about that, but not anything else. So I don't know. I think a lot of people kind of view this stuff as actual training camp, and I think that's why they get upset. But again, I think we should cut these guys some slack until the CBA is amended, until both sides agree that these things are mandatory, which they're never going to do. And I think we should just kind of forget about it. So that's my next topic. And I have one final topic, and that is about what kind of fan you are and how you enjoy the game of football and how you digest football and what brings you pleasure when you're watching football. Is it X's and O's? Is it just winning and losing? Is it breaking down film, breaking down tape, whatever they call it, offense and defense? What brings you pleasure? Now, in my opinion, there are many ways you could be a fan. You could be somebody who just watches the Steelers and that's it. You don't pay attention to any other NFL game. You don't pay attention. You don't know X's and O's. You don't know. All you care about is did the black and gold win? If they won, you're happy. If they didn't win, you're upset. But then when the season's over, then you forget about football for a while, and then you come back to it later in the year. There are some people that eat, sleep, and drink and everything else football 24/7, 365. They're all about the OTAs. They're all about minicamp. They're all about training camp. They're all about who's winning, who's going to be what jersey numbers are the rookies going to be wearing. Who's the team captain? Every little story about the Steelers, they devour it, right? There are people that they have a football background and they recognize cover three, but when they see it, they can tell if a cornerback has fluid hips or not, or if a quarterback can read a defense. There are people that are those kind of fans. But to me, there's no such thing as a superior fan, right? This is where I come back to the X's and O's part. They're breaking down, because I get criticized about that all the time. You don't know how to break down offenses and defenses. That's true. I never said I did. If you've been following my work for 11 years on Behind the Steel Curtain, you know I don't talk about stuff like that. I don't even, and you know why? Because I don't really care. It doesn't interest me. It really doesn't. You know what interests me about the NFL? The stories. I love the stories. I love the drama. I love hearing about players that came up from nothing. Like Vince Williams is a great example, in my opinion. He was a 6th-round pick. He wasn't like an undrafted free agent, but he was a 6th-round pick. He was thrown into the fire right away. He probably didn't even expect to play a lot in his rookie year, and he started 11 games for a team that really needed him to contribute. And now, look at him. He's one of the senior most players on the team. He's back again after being cut. They mended fences, and he's going into his 9th year. To me, I love that kind of story. I love Jerome Bettis' story about how he came back for one more year. He risked one more year of blood, sweat, and tears in 2005. He came back because he knew that year's Super Bowl would be in his hometown of Detroit. And he even said, if we would have went to the Super Bowl, meaning him and the Steelers, if they would have went to the Super Bowl without me, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. He went back for one more year. They barely made the playoffs, and they became the first team ever to win 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl in his hometown. What a story. You couldn't have, if somebody would have handed you a script and said, this is our fictional football story, you'd rip it up and throw it away and say, this is stupid. This would never happen. Stuff like that. I'm constantly watching A Football Life. I love A Football Life. If you can find them on YouTube. I love those kind of stories. I watched Vince Lombardi, and you talk about somebody who was he was all about football, but he also struggled in his personal life because his wife was often lonely because he stayed at the office, all day long and all night, and he was a bear to be around during the week because he's so into his team and so into trying to find a way to win. So I mean, Gail Sayers, who recently passed away. If you ever watched the one with it was a dual episode of him and Dick Butkus. They came into the league together. They were both, if you can imagine, the Bears had 2 top 5 draft picks, and they landed Dick Butkus and Gail Sayers in the same draft. Amazing. But anyway, Gail Sayers, his career came to an abrupt end because or at least the tail end of his career was bittersweet because he suffered a major knee injury, and 40 years later, he's on national TV, basically just so frustrated, saying, "I wish they had better doctors back then. I wish the medical profession was better back then because I wanted to, he was so just years later, just distraught over the fact that he couldn't have the career that, even though he made the Hall of Fame. A lot of people say he was the greatest open field runner who ever lived, but he was just so frustrated that his career was cut short because of injury. So to me, that's what really, like I wrote a story the other day, and I'm just sitting there, and I included Texas. I can't even think of his name anymore. Hacksaw Reynolds, the veteran linebacker who legend has it used to show up to the morning meal on game day, fully dressed in uniform, black eye and all, helmet, everything. And I got that because of all the years I spent watching NFL films. I still watch NFL films. I just said I do. But the old ones from the 70s and the 80s, those shows. I consume so much of that stuff. I know so much of the history of the league. That's what grinds my gears. Like, the other stuff doesn't interest me. It just really doesn't. I mean, Matt Canada, you asked me about Matt Canada's offense. I'll tell you, jet sweep, motion, this, that, and the other. I hope it works. If it doesn't, then he'll probably be gone, and they'll bring in a new guy, and he'll have a different philosophy, right? I know the Steelers have led the league in sacking the quarterback every year since 2017, right? How they do it, I don't know. I mean, they do it with a lot of great players. I know that, but how they do it, 1 gap, 2 gap, I don't know. Lots of blitzing, beats me. But I know that it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch the Steelers go from struggling to get after the quarterback for so many years, the old slow and it's over version of their defense, and then they rebuilt it into what you see today with all these extraordinary athletes. So, but if you like that kind of stuff, if you like the X's and O's, if you like watching film and tape and breaking things down, hey, more power to you. But I don't think anybody's any better than anybody else because of how they choose to watch the Steelers, how they choose to follow the Steelers, how they choose to write about the Steelers. I mean, for every Ron Jaworski, right, there's a Chris Berman. For every Merrill Hodge, there's a Skip Bayless. If it might be a poor example. Myron Cope was he didn't know anything about X's and O's. He said Andy Russell used to make fun of him all the time for not knowing how to break down defenses and offenses and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I know when a player's fast and when he's slow and when he can catch and when he can tackle and when he can't do any of those things. And Ernie Staunton said that's all you need to know to know football. So that's my last tangent of the night, and I will take some questions and comments. Here's one from Sherry Richards from Facebook, and she says, NFL Films is awesome. So glad they have documented the history of the league so well. Exactly right. And on that note, Sherry, to your point, probably 50% of the reason why I'm such a big NFL fan today is because I grew up on NFL Films. I mean, yeah, obviously I love the Steelers, but I also quickly fell in love with the game of football, with the NFL and the history of the league, the merger, everything. I love going back and watching stuff about the AFL and how the AFL and the NFL, they duked it out for years, and they finally decided we got to work together, and they merged, and here we are today. So I learned so much from NFL. I'll always be indebted to Steve Sable, to his father Ed Sable, they took a sport and they humanized it. It was if you're just watching it from afar, it's just a bunch of big dudes crashing into one another with helmets and pads and everything. But they made it into like they made it dramatic. They humanized these guys. They with the bloopers and everything. It was such a great thing. And of course the NFL Films music. The haunting music. John Facenda's voice, his narration, and it was fan. Even I loved it, and I'm probably gonna go watch it after I'm done doing this show. I'm gonna go find some old shows on YouTube and watch them. And here's a question from Mark Tobin, and he asked, "Will the offense score more rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns this year?" I'm gonna say no. I think the running game is going to be better, but I still think this is going to be a team led by Ben Roethlisberger. He's still going to be the gunslinger. Maybe not to the same degree he was last year, but it's still going to be on his shoulders to lead the. It's going to be a better. I think the running game can be improved dramatically, and I think it's going to help the offense. And I think Matt Canada's influence is going to obviously help a lot. But I still think this is. If you look at the weapons on this team, they go 4 deep at receiver. Eric Ebron is a great target, even though he had some drops last year, but he's still a great target and he's still a great matchup problem. I think it's natural to still want to pass the football. I don't think how many touchdowns could they score? I mean, you're talking they'd have to score like 30 rushing touchdowns to surpass Ben, because I think he's going to throw a minimum of 25 touchdowns out, even if they rush the ball much better this year than they did last year. Ben's probably going to throw 24, 25 touchdowns at minimum. So it would be hard for them to do that. And here's one from Thanks Mean Joe, and he says Facenda was awesome. He certainly was. Jeff Dunn says, I think the running game takes off this year. I think it can be improved. Yeah, I really do think it's going to be. It can be. I don't know yet. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of questions. I mean, we don't know it's the end of May. We don't know quite how things are going to go. All we can really do with Matt Canada is look at what he did in college when he was at Pitt, LSU, and Jeffrey Benedict, Kevin Smith. Those guys, they do a great job of you should check their film breakdowns out. You should check those out. But still, we don't know how much of Matt Canada's offense in Pittsburgh is going to be tailored to the personnel he has on the roster, how much it's going to be tailored to Ben's influence and what he likes to do, because he's still the straw that stirs the drink. 39 or not, commitment to running or not, it's still Ben's team. So we don't know. We can get a great idea of what Canada's offense is going to look like based on his days running offenses at college, but we still don't know exactly what it's going to look like at the with the Steelers because of the personnel that they have. So here's one from Wes Hickok, and he says, I think only Harris and McFarland score for the running backs. I'm going to say Z-Max scores 3, Harris 10. I think that's fair. It's fair. I mean, I think Harris has a chance to be a great, as somebody said earlier, a candidate for Rookie of the Year. But I still don't think. I think it's going to be hard for the offense, for the running. I think it's going to be hard to score more rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns. I think it always is in the modern NFL. So, and here's one from Steeler Chick 46. She says, "I want to go watch Santonio Holmes catching the Super Bowl again." There you go. See, I influenced her. Mark Tobin asked, "Does Ben have a first-team All-Pro season?" I wouldn't say. I don't. Probably not. I think there's too much competition with Patrick Mahomes and even like some of the younger quarterbacks. But I think he could have a really good season. I think he could have one similar to last year: 33 touchdowns, 10, 12 interceptions. And if you have a vastly improved running game, then, I mean, it's just going to make things all that more effective. If we saw how Elway was in his last years, once TD Terrell Davis got going, and once he became really the driving force of that offense with those late 90s Broncos teams, and then once Elway figured out he didn't have to do it all on his own, that offense was so much better. But Elway was still Elway in those days. If you remember that AFC Championship game at Three River Stadium in '97, after the '97 season, it was Elway making the big throws at the end to put that game away. I mean, it's not like he didn't have to lead any 99 or 98 and a half yard drive at the end of that game. He just had to make some key third down throws, and he did that, and he tore the heart out of Three Rivers. So, yeah, here's one from Steeler Pittsburgh, and they say Jeffrey Benedict, as I said, he's showing what Canada's offense could be in this breakdown. Yeah, he's doing some great stuff from Canada's. I mean, if you remember, if you're a Pitt fan at all, or if you're a Clemson fan, then you might remember 2016 how effective Pitt's off. I mean, it was explosive that year. I had so much fun watching that. It was such a great offense, and of course, the reason why I bring up Clemson is because Pitt upset Clemson. They went to their place and upset them when they were ranked second. But it's all good because Clemson still won the national title that year. So no harm, no foul if you're a Clemson fan. But still, it was fun as a Pitt fan to see that. Here's one from Jeff Dunn, and he says, running back and our defense will carry us to 7. Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's effective, then we already know their defense is good. And here's Bill Davis, who says 360 spin. I don't know what that means. But maybe it's some other conversations that I missed. And here's one from Thanks Me and Joe, and he asked my current thoughts on a revamped O-line. I like Shukes moving over to left tackle. I think that's more of his natural position. Zach Banner is he relishes the being aggressive and being a road grader at right tackle. Obviously Kendrick Green, who obviously hasn't won anything yet as far as a starting job at center, he enjoys being mean and nasty, and obviously we know Kevin Dotson does. We know David DeCastro's resume speaks for itself. I think he was just hurt last year, and I think if he's healthy again, he's still going to be an all-pro right guard. So I think there's potential there for it to be pretty good. Nothing's guaranteed, but I think the pieces are in play. I think they're in better shape to have a decent O-line now than they were, say, in the late 00s when they kind of pieced together a bunch of undrafted free agents, low round picks, and it just didn't work. I think this year they have a slightly higher pedigree along the line. Obviously, Kendrick Green's a 3rd round pick, Shukes is a 3rd round pick, Banner's a 4th round pick, Dotson's a 4th round pick, and of course, DeCastro's a 1st round pick. You can't have 1st round picks and 2nd round picks making up the entire units, but I think they have enough talent there that and so many of these guys, specifically, as I said, Green, Dotson and Banner relish blocking for the run. So I think that bodes well. It remains to be seen. I don't know. I like some of the stuff coming out of OTAs regarding Adrian Clem and his aggressiveness, his aggressive nature, his aggressive vernacular in meetings. And these guys, he seems to be really firing these guys up in terms of wanting to get out there and be aggressive and be physical in the ground game. So, I mean, that's where it starts, right? That's what people talked about last year. So often, if you don't practice to run, then it's hard to implement a solid, sound ground game during the regular season. So they're certainly going to emphasize the run this year. I'm not saying it's going to be the driving force of their offense. What I am saying is they're certainly emphasizing the improving the running game. So it's like we talk about all the time. It's not really about when people say balance. They think it means you have to have 50% pass and 50% run. To me, balance means being effective in both the passing game and the ground game. That's where what the Steelers have to be, is effective both in the air and on the ground. If they can do that, then they're going to be a more effective offense. They're going to be more dangerous offense, a more explosive offense. Look at how much they struggled last year on short yardage plays. Look at how much they struggled near the goal line, trying to pound the ball in, especially towards the end of the year. So it's really not about 50-50 run versus pass. It's more about just being effective in both areas. So James Bradshaw, I wonder if it's Terry Bradshaw's relative, and he says, who will be our best receiver? Claypool. Or at least he'll be the most dangerous. He's going to be their most dangerous weapon in 2021. I just think he has the chance to be the next great receiver in the NFL. I'm really excited about him. All right, everybody agrees Claypool. It's like it's rare that you have everybody's in unison when it comes to somebody. Here's Bill. Here's what he clarifies the 360 spin, and he says John Elway's 360 spin while being hit hard in the playoffs or Super Bowl. What a statement they keep showing on ESPN. Yeah. That one that against the Packers, that was when he was running for a first down late in that game. Oh, I was such a big Broncos fan that day. Excuse me. I was such a big Broncos fan that day because of the stranglehold the NFC had on the AFC in the Super Bowl for 13 straight years. Even though the Broncos beat Pittsburgh 2 weeks before, they I was so proud of them for finally getting the AFC off the schneid as it pertained to the Super Bowl. So on that note, I'm going to bid you all adieu. It was a fun show. It was a fun night. And make sure to check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website as a reminder. Please check out all of our stuff on YouTube, our YouTube channel. You can find us again on any audio platform as far as the podcast. And until I talk to you again, you all have a great weekend and go Steelers.